Shamek, happy Passover, happy Passover. Hey, I pray that many of you guys are getting excited for tonight, Passover, as we remember what Yeshua did for us and the story behind it. So today I just want to come on a little bit, and I just want to share a little bit on things Messiah said during Passover. Because if you're celebrating Passover, these are probably some of the things that you might want to read about and go over yourself with, for those that you're celebrating Pesach with. So once again, we're excited. We're ready to get to this Seder later on and break bread with friends and family, and then just enjoy our time during that moment. But also along with that, like I said, today starts Passover, and tomorrow starts the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. So today we are in the Feast of Passover, and then tomorrow the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, which is 7 days. But when you put that together with Passover, it's actually an 8-day celebration. And we celebrate the life and the death and the resurrection of Messiah. And all of the festivals of Jehovah must have been significant to Yeshua, because we can read in scriptures that he spoke during his time, and we see that he was at many of them. Amen. And having some idea of the setting and context for his words can transform our understanding of them. Much weight and significance is added in his words when we realize he spoke them at the Passover table, keeping Jehovah's instruction from Leviticus chapter 23, if you want to read that. So here are some of the few things that Messiah said during Passover. The first thing he said at Passover is, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Right? And a lot of people have this verse memorized, overlooked the obvious implication of it. And the way literally seated at Passover table, when he said this, if you want to get to Messiah and the Father, you might want to think about what's going on right now and what's happening. In other words, what Yeshua was saying, that I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the living Torah. I am the instructions I am the word and the instruction that was given to my servant Moshe to pass down to the people, and it was put into law. I am the way, the truth, and the life. In other words, I am the door. And if you want to get to the Father, it can only be through me. In other words, you have to accept the Passover lamb. You have to accept what he came for and what he did and why he died. It's the only way to get to the Father. You have to go through him. The only way to get to the Father, you have to believe in him. You have to accept him by faith and grace. You have to. The second thing that he said is, if you love me, keep my commandments. John chapter 14, verse 15. So if you love Messiah, his desire is that you will be obedient, friends, to his instructions. I want you to picture him seated with the matzah and the wine, keeping the set-apart time that was also celebrated by Abraham and Moshe, while he speaks the words of Jehovah to those at the table. And it's easier to remember that some of his commands are to celebrate his festivals. Amen. Let me turn this music off in the background. So we want to remember that. How do we show the Father that we love him? How do we show Yeshua that we love him, Messiah that we love him? He said, if you keep my commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. What commandments? Everything that he's put into place. Even the festivals that we're told that we have to observe and that he wants us to celebrate. They were written part of the law as well. They were written part of his instructions, his commands. Whatever word you want to use there. They were written, they were added to that, and along with observing the commands or his instructions, part of his instructions were certain feast days that he says we must observe. Why? Because these are his holy days. And if they're his holy days, listen, then I think that we need to keep them. We need to follow them. We need to observe them. Because he said it. It's not just a regular day. It's his holy day. And if we say that we are followers of the way, if we say that we belong to him and he's our God, then we need to do exactly what he says. Amen. And stay true to that. He says, I am the vine and you are the branches. On another translation, which is John 15, chapter 5, I am the vine and you are the Nazarene. So this analogy is probably the parable that Messiah spent the most time explaining. It's significant that he chooses to talk about pruning when his father, the gardener, cuts off part of the healthy tree in order that it can grow more at Passover. And while we are rooted in Yeshua, he expects his people to grow. Growth looks different each season. In each season of your life, you should be growing even more. You should be maturing into a believer even more, right? Each season. Let's look at a fruit tree, for example. Right? Every season it grows. There's a season where it doesn't bear no fruit, but then there comes a season when it matures, it begins to bear fruit. And then the next season, what happens? It begins to bear more fruit, and the process continues and continues over and over each season. So there was a season in your life that you were learning. There was a season in your life that you possibly didn't bear fruit. But as every season comes along, you should begin to start bearing fruit to the point where you're bearing fruit, and each season you're bearing more fruit. In other words, you're maturing, and you're growing as a believer. Amen. So again, he says, I am the vine, you are the Nazarenes, the branches. The next thing that he says at Passover was watch and pray. Matthew 26, verse 41. Yeshua wants us to watch and pray at this time of the year, but if we aren't observing his holy days, how can we do that? Let me say that again. He wants us to watch and pray at this time of the year, but if we aren't observing his holy days, how can we do that? His holy days gives us insight to what he's doing and what he's going to do, right? His holy days are also prophetic. They tell us what Yah is up to. But if we're not observing his holy days, then we're clueless. We're not being watchful, and we're not praying. Observing his holy days allows us an understanding the holy days and what they really mean in its context, and understanding that, again, gives us insight. We're a party like this. We're privy to information because Yahushua said, listen, he said, I don't keep secrets. In other words, I don't keep secrets from my friends. So everything that I'm giving you is so that you can know. Everything that I'm sharing with you is so that you can watch and pray. So all the holy days is a way to help us to watch for his return, to watch for what he's doing, to watch for the signs, and then pray. Pray that we're found favorable in his eyes when he returns. Amen. And then the next thing he says is this: if the world hates you, know that it hated me before you. If you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, for that reason the world hates you. And that's found in John chapter 15, verses 18 and 19. The Messiah shares a Passover that he does not expect his followers to fit in with the world. And guess what? He's okay with that. He understood completely what it was like to be hated of the things he said and the lifestyle he chose to live. Friends, believing, coming into truth and understanding your speech and the way you choose to live your life now, coming into truth, is going to seem strange and seem peculiar to people. And people might even hate you because you're speaking truth. People will begin to hate you because you're living in truth. And people will want to turn their backs on you because of truth. Listen, they hated him before they hated you. They hated him before they hated you. Amen. And he understood this completely, what it was like to be hated for the things that he said and the lifestyle he chose to live. So watch this. So if you're keeping Passover instead of the mainstream Easter holiday, of course people are going to be upset, especially family and friends, because this is a time where a lot of family and friends would come together. But here's the truth, friends. Here's the truth. It's not really about you, right? It's really not about you. It's about them rejecting the ways of Yahuwah. Amen. That's what it's really all about. They're not hated. They're not angry at you. They don't hate you. They hate what you stand for. They reject his ways, his instructions. That's what they're rejecting. Truth, not you. So listen, you keep your head up and you continue to stand for truth and you continue to speak truth and you continue to walk in truth. The next one is that he said at Passover is, in the world you have pressure, but take courage. I have overcome the world. That's a good one. In other words, Passover is a beautiful time to remember that the Messiah overcame the difficulties and injustices that we face. And Lord knows that today we do face many injustices and many difficulties. And we know that many of us are feeling a lot of pressure. But he gives us a command. What's the command? He says, but take courage. That's the command. But the command is take courage. You know, when there's a but, you need to listen, because something good is about to be said after the but most times. Or something that we really need to listen to and really take hold of when there's a but. And the command that he tells us is take courage. In other words, don't be afraid. Don't be timid. Don't be shy about the injustices and the difficulties that we're facing. He wants us to take courage. It's a command, and we must follow that if we say that we're believers of the way. Take courage no matter what it looks like, no matter what it seems like. All hell can be breaking loose. But his command to us is take courage, and we must be obedient, because he said, listen, I have overcome the world. So if he overcame the world, then you're in good hands. You are in good hands. He says, this is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Luke 22 verse 19. Do what to remember Messiah? To eat the bread at Passover. His body that was broken. Right? Every time we eat the bread, we're reminded that not only is he was the manna from heaven, not only he is the bread of life, but that his body was also broken for us. Amen? And watch this. This is how we know that he celebrated Passover. This is how we know that he celebrated Yah's feast days. Because Luke 22 verse 8, he tells his taught ones, the disciples, go and prepare the Passover for us. So here's the Messiah literally commanding his followers to take time to celebrate Passover. And this is what we're doing today for many of you who are celebrating Passover today. Matthew 26:41 tells us that he said, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And this verse describes how many of us as believers generally want to follow and serve the Messiah. But our flesh is often the biggest problem. The spirit is willing, but the flesh likes chocolate Easter bunnies. The flesh likes the chicks. The flesh likes the Easter bags. The flesh likes to join in all the festivities that usually happen at Easter. But the spirit is willing. The spirit is willing. The spirit is willing to do what's right in Yah's eyes. But the flesh has too many good too many good things that it wants us to remember and for us not to let go. And it takes intention and training to get your flesh under the control of your spirit. Participating in Yah's set apart times is always an opportunity to strengthen our faith. When we celebrate his holy days, when we keep the Sabbath, when we keep his words, those things strengthen our spirit and it overcomes the flesh. And then he says these famous words that we know, right? Because they were said to Peter, you shall deny me 3 times. So obviously we knew what it was like to have people intentionally disassociate with him. Or he knew, Yahushua knew what it was like for people to abandon him. When Peter denied him later that night, he wasn't just saying that he didn't know Yeshua. He was saying that he hadn't just partook in the Passover meal with him. And how many people you know that claim to love and honor Messiah but adamantly deny his invitation to the Passover celebration? So friends, let's not deny the Passover lamb. The feast of Yahuwah was very near to Messiah's heart. If he celebrated, if he did them, if he followed them, then he wants us to do the same thing. Paul told us to imitate him as he imitated Christ. We're also told in scriptures that we're to be imitators of of Messiah. So we're to be imitators of Messiah, of Yeshua HaMashiach. We must follow his example. We must walk the way he walked. Amen. He says, you do not know what I am doing, but you shall know after this. John 13 verse 7. I love this verse because it tells me that I don't have to have all the instructions figured out or able to fully see how Yahuwah is working in my life. I don't have to have it all figured out. Eventually, all of these things will become clear. But in the meantime, all we have to do is walk in faith, friends. Just walk in faith. And I love the promise that even if we're keeping Yahuwah's feast and honoring Shabbat and so on, right, don't make sense right now, but we will be able to see Messiah in them someday. Listen, when I first started celebrating Shabbat, when I first started celebrating Passover, I didn't know what was going on. But the more I celebrate Passover, the more I keep his feast days, the more I observe Shabbat, the more I see him and the more things become clear. Amen. Again, how can you watch and pray unless you're observing his holy days? Next thing he says is, you should do as I have done. In other words, don't miss that Messiah has challenged us to live the way he did during one of Yahuwah's set apart time. Yeshua kept the feast, and we should. All of us. We should keep the feast. Amen. So I just wanted to come on here and just share real briefly on the things that Messiah has said at Passover or during this day of Passover. And it you know, it behooves us to keep those things in mind. You want to learn more about who Yahusha is? You want to learn more about who Yah is? Keep the feast days. Keep the Sabbath. The more you keep the feast days, his holy days, his set apart times, and the more you keep Shabbat, which is part of his set apart times as well, the more your understanding will grow, and the more your love, and the more you begin to know who he is, and the more you begin to know who he is, the more you begin to love him. Right? The more I seek him, the more I know him. The more I know him, the more I love him. Right? We want to sit at his feet. And sitting at his feet means doing what he has done. He kept the feast days or the set apart times, and he kept Shabbat, and we know that he kept the commandments because he was the law that came in flesh, the written word that came in flesh. Amen. So listen, I want you guys to have a blessed day, a blessed evening. May the Lord bless you. May he keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you. And enjoy, please enjoy the set apart time that we have set for today and for tonight, as you remember him and you get to know him and know more about him during this time that we're observing. Shalom, shalom, and once again, happy Pesach. Be blessed, and I'll see you soon.